Welcome, everyone. I am Dr. Elizabeth Cantu. I have the pleasure and privilege of being the current CTL faculty director at Estrella Mountain Community College. I'm very excited today to welcome all of our virtual attendees and all of our in-person guests, where we will be doing a showcase on our FRACTL, which is our Faculty Resource Action Committee for Teaching and Learning. Committee, we actually have the opportunity to host some opportunities to really help with course development, as well as to give a space for innovation, tools, things that really can kind of help us advance teaching and learning in this rapidly growing and expansive field of higher education that we know, because of technology, need, and even funding, you can even say, affects sort of how we do the work that we do. So with that, I'm gonna hand it over to Amy Hill, who is our FRACTL chair, who will share a little bit more about those opportunities.
All right, so I'm sure many of you have seen the calls that have gone out. So under FRACTL, we have two major grants that we do every academic year. The first one is on major course creation of online courses in Canvas. So they can be online, they can be face-to-face, they can be hybrid, but creating that course master shell that can then be used for multiple faculty, residential or adjunct. So we have a few people presenting today on some great things they've done in their course design. So Najma, Liz, and I get the privilege of seeing all these courses as they're being developed, and it's really cool to see the innovative, cool things people do in their classes for other people to then kind of share and use. So we have some of those today, and then our second grant is the Innovation and Learning Grant, open to everyone at Estrella, so not just faculty, so faculty and staff. And we have a couple of opportunities for some people who had grants, and they're going to share what they did in their Innovation and Learning Grant. So we're going to start today with course design. Michael Boring is up first, and you're going to be sharing some things from your Philosophy 101.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Hi, I'm Michael Boring, philosophy faculty here at Estrella Mountain Community College, and I redesigned my PHI 101, a gateway course for philosophy, last fall, and I kind of want to talk a little bit about what brought me to redesigning this course and how it impacted how I designed the course. And also give a plug and shout out to another great opportunity that I had here at Estrella a couple of years ago when I took the culturally relevant toolbox course. And if you haven't had the opportunity to take this, it's highly recommended, or at least look at some of the resources that we have. But through the process of this course that I took with Liz and Clarissa a couple of years ago, I was forced to reflect upon my pedagogy and upon the content of my course more specifically. And what I discovered or should I say, admitted the truth to, was that beyond 1 week on feminist epistemology and 1 week on Buddhism, my 16-week course was dominated by dead white men. And as what I had learned in the culturally relevant toolbox course is that if I'm going to engage with my students, if I want people to think philosophically, which I believe to be hugely valuable. Then I've got to be able to connect with them on a way that is comfortable for them, not comfortable with me. And so I needed to approach them through different lens. And so what I chose to do was to redesign my course entirely because I did feel self-conscious about the way the course was. And I, of course, had the opportunity to redesign the course with the help of CTL through the master grant, which again is something I'm very grateful for, and I think is really paying off for my students. So what I decided to do is I took 3 contemporary Latina feminist philosophers, thinkers, and used them as anchor points throughout my course. And I'll point that out as I walk through the course. Okay, so here we go. Here's my landing page. And CTL put this nice banner up there, which is definitely fun. A little bit about what's going on, and then directing them right to the modules. With the help of the support of the CTL, I was able to integrate a lot of tools that I was not familiar with, or assessments that I was not familiar with. I will give a shout out to CCS here for our effective time management activity. Make it to getting started. I was aided in bringing a lot of these things up to date, in introducing myself, actually going ahead and putting a picture of myself up there, a little bit about myself, and some of my likes and dislikes, opening myself up to a little bit more personable approach. I have a habit of being, have had a habit in the past of having some distance, and I kind of maintain that distance with the content of my course, which again is something that I was looking to change. And this is all, boilerplate stuff that you're all familiar with. But again, just integrating the resources has been really super valuable. Okay, now into how I designed the course. The first 2 modules are really one module that I split into 2 for some reason that I have since forgotten. But they're fairly straightforward and remain fairly similar to how I've done things in the past, where I introduce the topic, thought of a new idea of what I'm going to add to this for next semester, but that's a secret. Where it really gets interesting is when we dive into epistemology. And this is where things get much more fun. And we lead up to Gloria Anzaldua's work, a very short passage that challenges traditional approaches towards knowledge. We had introduced feminist challenges to traditional epistemology just prior to this, and then we look at a specific thinker. And so he's setting the groundwork. I use epistemology as a groundwork, and we wrap up our discussion of epistemology with a challenge. And then what I liked about this is I gave the students, I'm trying to integrate more I call it democratic decision-making or student choice, student agency in the course. So I give, for the Anzaldua assignment, I give 3 options. They have to choose one. And they're in increasing point value and increasing challenge. Looking at these to give you an example of this. For a 10-point option, very simple. Either define one of these concepts. For a 20-point option, explain how they relate. For a 30-point option, relate the philosopher to the whole of the module. Giving a little bit of choice. What I've also started practicing, and we'll make this explicit, is giving students the option of, if they wish to do more than just one option, they can, if say they did the 20-point option, they can also do a 30-point option and a 10-point option and use that extra 40 points to replace assignments that they are missed or are not necessarily connecting. Again, the reason I'm offering this option is because of the really powerful response that I'm getting to the Latina feminist thinkers in this course. Then more stuff. And then we come to our next anchor point, the thought of Maria Lugones. Again, I provide a short reading from her, and she again is tying into the entire module. In this case, she's going to challenge typical traditional concepts of self and typical traditional concepts of free will and agency. Again, 3 options. Either or option, explain one of the concepts, explain both of the concepts, or now a little bit deeper exploration, explain how they relate to each other.
You got a shout out in the chats from Dr. Wader saying, love that.
Oh, awesome, thank you, thank you. And do one more module, and then one of the things that I've been trying to encourage is getting students to start to scaffold their writing, start to scaffold how they are approaching the topic. Oops. This is all leading up to the final assignment, and the last 2 weeks of the course. So Anzaldúa and Lugones are both rather short submodules. The last module of the course, even after our second exam, is a closer look, 2 full weeks of Mariana Ortega's phenomenology. And here is this is all leading up to their final assignment for the course. Again, giving 3 options: a 100-point option, a 200-point option, and a 300-point option.
Where are my fucking glasses?
Okay. And I give a little bit of structure there, and this is a little bit more open, and they can basically create and construct their assignment here and how they want to do it. But again, if they for some reason decide to write 3 large assignments, I would be open to that. You know, I am really interested in this course in getting students to take charge of how they best learn. Some students are going to learn with short assignments, very focused on the textbook and the readings. Other students are going to thrive in letting their creativity kick in a little bit more. If that is something, for example, that philosophy inspires. Not everybody's inspired by philosophy. I failed it my first time, so I wasn't inspired at first. That's it. Any questions about that? Yes, please.
I love the design of the course, by the way. We've kind of talked about this even in our final reviews, but I'm just curious from this, and I don't know if you have any data on it yet, but I'm curious, your previous version and this version, are you seeing a difference with your students engaging more?
Yeah. I don't have any documentation for that. I don't have any statistics. I'm a philosopher. But just as far as what's going on in the classroom, there's a liveliness that's definitely picked up. I see people exploring these challenging ideas. You know, these thinkers that I am presenting are really throwing a monkey wrench into some of the fundamental ways that we think. Okay? Way beyond, even things that, people like Immanuel Kant are doing, so it's been great. And the assignments, the writings I'm getting from them they're more personal.
Yeah.
Which is what I was hoping to see.
You're representing the population there, sorry. Yeah, that's great.
Who knew that it would work? What they've been teaching and have proven works, right?
For sure.
I just had to get my gray hair out of, where.
I feel like Erin has her hand up too, online.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Is that for me, for Erin?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So Michael, I just want to say I really love what you're doing. I've actually done this, the grading option before in a mythology class, and students really like that option because sometimes they can only do C-level work, and so they would pick, option number 1. Sometimes they're able to do A-level work and they pick option number, 3. The only thing I noticed in your Canvas is that you have points attached to each assignment link. And the problem with that is if the student chooses one option, they're going to be penalized in their grade for not doing the other 2. What you probably need to do is to change all of the points to 0, because which one is 10, which one's 20, and which one's 30. That way it doesn't upset their percentage or their point total at the end of the semester.
I have a different way of addressing that issue. That is something that I thought about. And the problem with setting everything equal to 0 is it makes everything come across as extra credit. So what I do is I leave the point values there, but leave them blank and will not register 0 for those. So the total point value at the end of the semester may vary between students, because one student has taken on a 10-point assignment and will not even, the 20 and 30-point assignment don't even exist for them. Whereas another student takes on the 20 and the 10 and 30 don't even exist for them.
Okay.
Just really quick before we go to Jeff, Dr. Waker says she can always look you with stats if you would like.
Cool. So I guess we're going to
Dr. Phil.
So Erin alluded to it, but I assume that those grading options are kind of grade options as far as if you do the 10-point thing.
Yes.
So then that's kind of part of your maximum total. So you're doing C-level work versus.
You're going to get a 7 out of 10.
Yeah. Okay.
Or if you're doing C-level, if you go for the big assignment, maybe you only get 14 or 15 out of 20, or excuse me, 25 or 21 out of 30.
Yeah. So it's kind of an A work versus B work. Or for a challenge, if you're challenging.
Exactly. If you feel like going for it, but it's also a risk.
Okay, that's what I figured, but
I'm going to go for the 30-point assignment, and you blew it. How the student blew it, and it stings. So, but that's life.
Yeah.
Okay, other question. It looks like Erin's.
Any other questions?
Okay,
Online, please.
Yeah, so because I was just trying to understand. So one, I only said the stats thing because you were saying you see like the qualitative changes, but you haven't looked. So don't worry, I'm not saying you should do stats necessarily, but so if they try the 30-point and do okay, and they get 15 out of 30, is that still better than the people that tried the 20-point or is that, wait, hold on. Is that still better than people that tried the 10-point and got 10 out of 10? Like, do they still, even if they don't do the 30-point, even if they don't?
No, and I actually had a student ask me to explain this, and if I had a whiteboard handy, I could do it. But so for example, if say we have three assignments, we have a
Whiteboard? Bring it over?
Oh, sure. How am I doing? Am I taking too long?
Yeah, you're over, but
Okay.
there's a question, so.
Cause I just thought, once you said it was risky, I was like, oh, okay, so maybe they don't get, it's not like the same. Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yeah, that, oh, yeah, there you go.
Can you guys see them? They
Mhm.
should be.
Yeah, you can see it.
So, let's say student one, okay, and student two, and student one does a 10-point assignment, does nothing but 10-point assignment. Okay? And student two does a 10-point assignment, a 20-point assignment, and a 30-point assignment. Student one is going to be judged on how many points out of 30 they get. Student two is going to be judged on how many points out of 60 they get. So if student one is kicking ass at these easy assignments and is getting 10, 10, and 10, they got 30 out of 30, that's 100%, right?
Oh.
That goes into their final grade. Student two was a little over ambitious and they got, say, an 8, I'm gonna make it easy, a 16, and 80% of 30 help me. 24.
Mhm.
This is why I'm not good at statistics.
Hey, you got it faster than.
So we end up with 48, and so that's an 80%, right? So student one took the easier road and maybe understood their strengths and weaknesses. Philosophy isn't one of them. Let me just get the facts. I can do that. Student two was like, oh, I'm going to really work on my writing. It needs some development, obviously, but you know, I still got to be.
Mm.
It's it can be a different course for a different student.
Yeah.
They just have to know up front that they might be taking that risk.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
Right, next up, we have now Jeff Miller.
Yes.
Bio 100.
And just bear with me 1 second. I need to pull up one more thing that I forgot to open, so. I'll just start talking while I'm doing this. So I redesigned the face-to-face Bio 100 course. And so this one, I did this because Mike Farabee retired and I was now in charge by 100. And so I created a face-to-face to share with any adjuncts that were teaching in person. I had already created on my own a Bio 100 online that is now being used by our adjuncts since Mike retired as well. But the face-to-face class hadn't been redone probably since Mike got hired, which is when the college started. So it was time, right? And so I'll take you through just a few of the things that I put into the class. So I'll just show you a little bit about the online portion of it first, because I do some questions, some activities online that go along with what we do face-to-face. So here's the landing page, kind of a standard landing page. And I like putting, jumping to the modules. I just like having a link directly to the modules right on the landing page so they can jump ahead if they know where we're at. So I can take you to just go to the modules page. And so the way I've organized this, because, oops, oh yeah, actually, let me show you now that I realize it, the course in progress, because I've reorganized it a little bit already. Face-to-face. So because it's online, I do a few activities online, but it's really a face-to-face course. The way I've now organized the modules is that I have everything is again still divided into weeks, but here's what we're gonna be doing in class during that week. Here's what they're responsible for online. And so I've separated out the modules into an in-person section and an online section. That also helps me just keep organized as well, and for grading purposes, that it's worked out so well so far. And so that's how I've done general organization. And I always kind of list you know, in Canvas, whether this is gonna be a lab that we're doing in class, versus kind of an in-class activity that's more kind of maybe videos or something on a computer or something like that, so they'll know a little bit more about what's going on when they're coming to class. I'll just show you one example of one of my online activities, because this is again how I do things as well, my online classes as well. And I'll show you this one because it's something that I try to do throughout the class, kind of like Michael had with bringing in the Latina figures. For the science class, the Bio 100, I try to do it a lot with place and something I call scientists at work. And so I try to bring in a lot of examples as best I can of people actually really doing the science and how they do it. And so students get a feel for what it's really like to do biology, and how they think about doing experiments and things. So for example, this activity looks at how people are surveying biodiversity in Gorongosa National Park, which is in Mozambique. And so I will usually start with something, you know, kind of some pictures just to show them where it is. And these are all the online activities are Canvas quizzes. But I've tried to actually make them more or less like a David Attenborough BBC show quiz. And so I've divided them up, maybe there's always an intro. This is what we're going to be doing in this activity. Then usually a short little introduction, you know, with lots of images, you know, leaving a little history about the country. And then as they go through, you'll see there's embedded videos and then questions that go along. They're with the videos or with the topics that they'll complete online, right? So this is just an example of what I do with my online activities to try to at least keep them interested and engaged, and at least make it look pretty. Pictures are worth 1,000 words.
Yeah.
And so again, so that's the kind of the online part that I use. The other thing that I do online before I take you to the face-to-face is I make use of the fact that we have Google on campus, and so students create web pages. They'll do this for both my online class and face-to-face classes. So this would be an example. This was just one I made just to give them an idea of what I'm looking for. So this is just using Google Sites. And I have a good write-up now that I think I've figured out all the problems that people have when they try to set these things up, but it's a little bit of work. So I have them, same type of idea, I have them make a kind of an about me page at the beginning, and then along the top, all the links up here are the assignments that they would complete during the semester. So I have like 4 or 5 usually for each of the classes I teach, web page assignments. This is for a non-majors class. And so again, this is just, you know, something I put in just so they can kind of see where they would write up, say something about a specific cancer and its treatments and diagnosis and things. And then they can link in, embed videos, pictures. And so it gives them a little more of a chance to be creative with what they're doing instead of simply just writing an essay and turning something in. This has worked out pretty well overall. I do run into issues of people not sharing the site properly or something like that I can't get access to it. But overall, it's worked really well. And again, how I do that then is I just create a spreadsheet for each class where students come in and they will paste their final web link so that I have access to them and everybody else in the class has access to them as well. So that they can look at each other's, and as well as, I can access all of them for grading. So because I did face-to-face, you can tell I like images. I really wanted to tie this. That's a jumping spider, by the way. If you don't know what that is, it's a little jumping spider. So what I've done with this is I've taken all my in-person work and arranged it into basically a book that can be printed out every semester. And again, so this would all match what is in the Canvas course, again, by either labs or whatever we're doing in class. And you can provide this as a PDF as well, because it's nice because you can actually say here, you're gonna study biodiversity. We can go right to that, and so everything in here is kind of arranged exactly how I will do it in class. And so this has been useful because especially if as a lead instructor, I need to provide this to any adjuncts teaching in person. And so everything is here, at least for what the students are doing. The one place I still haven't fully worked out is kind of an instructor version of this that would give more details about, you know, hey, if you run into this, or you should do this, or set this up early, or whatever it might be. I still haven't gotten that far yet because in my years here, I've always just taught my own stuff and never had to actually deal with adjuncts. And so this has been you know, the work is a little more work than I had maybe imagined it to be, but that's okay. And so that's how so again, the face-to-face has these different, all the different in-class activities are arranged into the book. And so that would include, again, both activities as well as, I also do have some reading, you know, readings will be embedded in there. I don't know what to do. I'm doing something with the mouse that I'm not aware of. There we go. Okay, sorry about that. Making me feel sick.
The students don't have to purchase a textbook.
No,
they just have
no,
access.
I don't know. Students don't have to purchase a textbook. I haven't used a textbook since I got here, so this is my version of a text. Yeah, and again, it's been, I feel like it's been quite useful so far.
You've got a couple comments in the chat.
Oh, okay, let me check.
Dr.
Yeah, let me get rid of this. It's just weird.
Dr. Uyghur, it's the spider that's crawling.
Yeah, I know the jumping spider's trying to kill me.
Jumping through. So she said really into the Google sites, and then also just that you basically graded it all you are, so.
Yeah, the Google Sites has worked, like I said, has worked out real well. I do that for my in-person 100 class and my marine bio class. And the students do seem to like it and engage with it more because it's kind of built, again, more of their ownership and the pictures and things with it. I do feel I need to work more student-to-student interaction with the websites, kind of force them to go look at each other's a little more than I'm doing right now. I think the first few years I've done this, it's been more just making sure it works and what assignments work for this. And now I need to make it a little more interactive. That's where I want to go. Yes, Patty.
Beautiful pictures and beautiful selection of the country that you wanted to highlight. Do you have any challenges with students who may not be as technology literate in creating a Google site?
I haven't had a real issue with students just not knowing at all what to do. Usually once I can get the site created with them, they seem fine. The one thing that does happen is that I want them to create one site and then pages. I will always get a few students every semester who create a new site for every assignment. And so then I go to the link and it doesn't take me to their site. So I give them a 0 and then they're like, I did it. You know, so there are just little bugs in the system, but I would say overall, no, the students don't have a problem, you know, working with Google Sites. It's fairly user-friendly. So no, overall, no, just it's mostly with links is where I have issues, or especially in online classes where students just don't create the site. And there's not really anything I can do, at least in person. I sit down on the first day of class and they make their site in person, so I have them all. Online, I'll always get a couple students who just don't do it. And I bug them and I bug them and I bug them. And any other questions?
Any other questions?
Otherwise, I will check out. All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jen. Very cool. All right. This next is Michelle. So you're going to show us Math 206.
Correct. Yes.
There you go.
All right.
On the big screen.
So just so you know, I'm gonna mute
Okay.
this person, so that, you know, if anyone coughs or something, it doesn't throw you off, but we're here.
Okay. Very good. I developed Math 206, which is actually an introductory statistics course for math in the fall, and I'm teaching it online for the first time this semester. So I thought I'd just kind of talk a little bit about how I set up the course, and I also wanted to share with you some of the assignments that I put in that may be a little bit different than you might imagine in a math class or a statistics class. So I'm going to start with the modules. I will say that typically I do make my students, so this is an online class, I do require my students to work through the content in the modules in the order it's presented so that they're not clicking on something in their to-do list and going, I have no idea how to complete this assignment. But in advance of today, because I didn't want to have to click through everything, I have clicked through everything, so you don't necessarily see the stuff grayed out. I kind of like Michael Boring. I felt my getting started module was getting heavy and really long, so I kind of separated into multiple parts, even though they do a lot of it in the first week. One thing that I did, kind of like Michael did, is I'll click on this just really quickly. I created a welcome video. And I found that students really like that I created a video because they can not only see me, but they can kind of get an idea of my personal background. I do share a little bit about the course, but also a little bit about me. And so they really kind of connect to that. But I also later on do a more formal, like I introduce myself again with some other information so that they can also introduce themselves to each other. So again, a lot of the introductory stuff, it's essential, but maybe not the fancy bells and whistles. But also, again, I have a module that we do at the beginning about getting to know your instructor and your classmates. So I do ask them I have a discussion board where I have them introduce themselves to their classmates. I post the first reply with a little bit more about me. And I also have learned that sometimes they're not as comfortable with how do I add pictures or different things. So I created a video to help them. I also took an idea from Susan Malmo and have my students do it and ask me anything the first week, just so again, they can, if they have, I found in a lot of cases, they're curious about more about my background because of something I mentioned. And in some cases, especially in a math class where they might have math anxiety, it gives them an opportunity to ask me like, hey, what is this class really going to be like? Or this is my first online class. What are some tips that you have for success? Those are questions I tend to get a lot. An overview of some things. And then before we get into statistics, I actually have a little bit about what is math and how to learn math. I'm going to skip through that for a minute. And once I get into the statistics or the main content of the course, I wanted to talk a little bit about how I set up my modules. So there's always an overview which has the learning objectives and everything. I wanted to talk a little bit about the learning objectives because as a result of learning about alternative grading and kind of restructuring some of my other courses to be alternatively graded, I state my learning objectives in a more student-facing way. Instead of students will be able to, I make them I can statements. So it's more of a student saying, I can state the difference between descriptive and inferential statistics. So I thought I'd mention that a little bit. So in addition to that, I give my students a discussion board at the start of the module where if they have questions they want to ask of one another, they can post there. I do tell them like in the discussion board and in general, hey, if you need help from your instructor, please contact me directly. Don't post on the discussion board. They don't get used all that much, but periodically someone will post something. And then I have a mix of different things throughout the modules. Some I do include discussions, which people may find a little strange sometimes in a math class, but I find that it really helps. I'll do a lot of discussion in class when I do in-person classes, and I wanted to translate it as best I could. One other thing I wanted to mention is that I have embedded more in Canvas. So more is Maricopa Open Education Resources. And so I have students do what I call check your understanding assignments, and that's where they can do practice. And if they get it wrong, then they can keep practicing until they understand it. And it will tell them right away, yes, you got the right answer. No, you didn't get this correct. And they can regenerate the problems. So they complete that. So for a lot of the math classes, when they're built either online or in person, a lot of us use more. I tend to like Canvas as a learning management system a bit better, but I do like more. So I have kind of gotten into the embedding more in Canvas. That way the students never have to create a sign-in for more. They just click on the assignment, it opens in Canvas, they complete it in Canvas, and go about the rest of their work in Canvas. And the nice thing is it adds the assignments to their Canvas calendar so they can manage their time a bit better. In addition to, I didn't show any of the discussions yet because I am going to show some of the discussions in a bit. But I also have quizzes, so they'll have quizzes that they do. And then at the end of every module, they have a wrap-up discussion. And I'm actually going to share one of the farther along wrap-up discussions. So the wrap-up discussions for the modules ask them to reflect on what they've learned about the math content, but also how they did in terms of their study skills. So these are the questions I asked them to reflect on. What were some of the most important things you learned about statistics in this module? What changes did you implement in this module based on your reflection and what your classmates shared at the end of the previous module? That's why I didn't want to share the first module one. That clearly isn't there in the very first one. What study skills and habits worked well for you in this module? What didn't go so well for you in this module? Did you approach learning the content with a growth mindset? Did you get help from your instructor, your classmates, or the tutoring center when needed? What, if anything, will you change to help you be more successful in future modules? And then I do have them answer some of the selected, those things that they reflect on in a discussion assignment. I went back and forth with whether I wanted them to just turn that into me as kind of a private reflection, but I decided to do it as a discussion board. I don't require for this one that they respond to classmates, but they do sometimes respond to classmates. And I think it helps them when they share like, hey, this didn't go so well for me. Someone might say, well, hey, have you tried this? Or someone says, you know what? I realized that taking notes is really important. Or maybe I need to watch the videos more than once. And so they do learn from each other. So I really like having them do this. Most of them do take it seriously, and it's good for me also to read what they say. So most of the modules kind of have a differing content. Not all of them have discussions, but a lot of the ones in the beginning do. While I'm here, what's going on in this graph is one of my favorite discussions and one that I noted that I kind of wanted to highlight. So in the discussions, I usually pose them some sort of scenario and ask them to discuss or ask them specific questions. For this one, this is taken from, I don't know how many of you are aware that the New York Times has or had, I don't know that they promote it as much as they used to, a feature that they used to do called What's Going On in This Graph, where they would share graphs from newspaper articles. And sometimes they take bits and pieces of information off to try to get students, and this is geared towards students at all levels, to kind of think about what is this graph really trying to get the point across. And so these are the questions. I've done this in in-person classes as well, and I ask some of the same questions. What do you notice about the graph? What do you wonder about the graph? What do you think the graph represents? And then some more pointed questions. What do you think it means for food to be on the line shown in the graph? What do you think it means for a food to be above the line? What do you think it means for food to be below the line? I asked that they post before they see responses and then respond to at least one classmate. I do an overall wrap up to make sure that because I don't want to hold up some students waiting to see all of the replies. So I do, once they've contributed to this, they can go on and look at a little bit more. I give them some information about the graph. So I guess I can click next and show you that. So I actually linked them to the article from the New York Times that it comes from. Actually, I created a PDF version. So because the New York Times, they often, otherwise it's behind a paywall. And so I wanted them to be able to read the article and talk a little bit about it before going into the next content. Let's see, what else did I want to mention? I have lots of fun. I try to, again, I try to be very interactive when I teach my classes. So even in my introduction, one of my another favorite thing is recognizing and describing mathematical patterns. I give them a multiplication table and ask them to look for as many patterns as they can find and then share them. And it's always fascinating to me to see what patterns they come up with. It's kind of fun. One more, I'll share one more one more of my discussion examples before there's a couple more assignments that I wanted to kind of highlight. And so the last one, and this is one that students tend to enjoy, is farther along in the probability module. So I know that in a lot of cases, students love like mystery boxes and these kinds of things. And I have friends who love Funko Pops, and we were in a store and I noticed that there are these mystery mini boxes that on the back have numbers about how likely, well, that end up representing how likely it is that you get each figure. And so I actually have my students, I show them a mystery minifigure box and ask them to predict which figure is in it. I give them a close-up of all sides of the box and the back of the box, and I number them so that they can just say, I think it's number 3. And then I ask them to write down their prediction along with what information they used. And then I have a reveal video, and then they post their discussion about what did they predict? Was it a correct prediction? How did they make their prediction? And what, if anything, could they do to make it more accurate? And then what do they think the numbers represent? And this one is always a fun one for me and for the students. I think the last couple assignments that I wanted to mention, so I know I mentioned quizzes. So each module, they have check your understanding and quizzes. But the big, for me, the big assessment is I have them do a semester project where they actually, it goes a bit beyond maybe a traditional statistics class, but they actually design a statistical study on a topic that they're interested in. So they learn how to craft a research question, and they think about like, how am I going to collect data? What am I going to do with that data? What statistics can I calculate? What tests can I do? Am I going to look for a relationship in terms of regression, or am I going to do a hypothesis test? And they kind of work on it throughout the semester. And so I will just maybe share one of the, like I said, they do it in parts. So they first come up with ideas for their research question. They get feedback from me. Then they finalize their research question. And then they do part 3, which is a bulk of it, where they're designing it. Whoops, I clicked on. So that's just kind of an introduction, and then here's the assignment. So they even learn about the IRB process because I really want them to understand what goes into a statistical study, and it's not just about the math. Math is important, but it's not just about the math. So then they have to determine if they're doing an observational study or if they want to do an experiment. And then I give them specific questions, like if you're doing an observational study, here are the questions you need to think about. They write a paper detailing for me how they will set up their experiments. And then as we go through the different modules, they do parts where they're like, okay, now I know about hypothesis testing. Does it make sense for me to do a hypothesis test for this one? Okay, now I know about regression. Does it make sense for me? Because a lot of their questions do ask about what is the relationship between certain things, and they may not know at the time when they set up the question that they want to do regression, but as they learn about it, then they add it in. So that's something that I have found that students really connect with, because they can choose a topic that is of interest to them, and it's not just something I'm assigning. They're like, I don't even care about this random topic. The last thing that I wanted to share is my course wrap-up assignment, which of course not, I should have just hit end. And just because it's a bit unique, so I'm going to just click on, it's more of a reflective assignment that asks them to some of similar questions to what they do at the end of each module, but about the course. So the most important thing they learned about math or statistics in the semester, and why. The most important thing they learned about themselves as a student, what surprised them most about the math or statistics that they learn in the class, what topics are they curious to learn more about as a result of taking the class. I asked them how their perspective has changed, what study skills help them be successful, what study skills they think they need to continue to work on to be successful in the future, how they think they did in terms of approaching the course with the growth mindset. And then I asked them to take one of the check your understanding or quiz problems that they worked on that they really struggled with, and talk about how the struggle itself was valuable. One thing I didn't mention is in the beginning, I have them watch a video that talks about how it's okay to struggle with math, and that you have to struggle with math to really learn, and that the struggle itself is valuable. And so I want them to kind of think about that for this problem. And then the last two, give them an example of a mathematical idea from this class that is creative or beautiful, and explain why. Oh, I think there are two more. And then this one also, how will what they learned about statistics impact their future career, and how will it impact their life? Because I really want, my goal for the class is for them to see how statistics is important for their futures as in whatever career they do, and in being a well-informed citizen of the world. So
Awesome.
That is it.
Thank you so much, Michelle. Really good stuff here. And I think what we'll do is you got some shout outs in the chat as well in regards to just really loving it, maybe even stealing some of those ideas. And I think we're going to switch gears a little bit.
All right, so we're gonna switch to the Innovation and Learning Grant. And Erica, you're gonna go next, okay?
So yeah, switching it up like they were saying, I'm not talking about a class, I'm talking about, it's actually my dissertation, which don't worry, I will not walk you through my entire dissertation defense, but the FRACTL Innovation and Learning grant helped pay for part of what I did with my dissertation. So I was looking at the effects of a book study on culturally responsive teaching, cultural care, and empathy. And so my problem with practice going into it, that's what I really like about ASU's EDD program, is they have you address a problem of practice in your own context. And they really, the way they said it was, what keeps you up at night? And that should be your problem with practice, because that's what you care about the most. So I thought about work that I had done with Dr. Cantu, Liz, and Dr. Manning, Linda Manning, and we looked at equity gaps at Estrella, and we saw some really large and disturbing equity gaps for different races at our school. So that was what I sort of chose as kind of my problem of practice. And so from there, I wanted to go and do something to address this. And from our previous work, we found that sense of belonging was lower for students of color particularly Black and African American students, and that our equity gaps, the lowest success rate was for Black and African American students. And so we thought this might be related and we wanted to address this. And so I went ahead and did a lot of lit review and discovered culturally responsive teaching is a way to increase sense of belonging in students. Like Michael was saying earlier, like Michelle said, you know, who would have thought that like applying things to your own life and connecting with your students that way, like makes them feel more belonging. So I decided to go ahead and do a book study by Zaretta Hammond. So Culturally Responsive Teaching and the Brain, which then tying in with Jeff, I also teach biopsychology. I'm like watching all these and I'm like, I can apply all, anyway. So I love anything to do with the brain. I teach biopsychology. That's my specialty. And so I found this book and she talks about how culturally responsive teaching not only is effective and good for learning outcomes, but how it actually increases learning because of what it does to the brain. And importantly, how if a student does not feel a sense of belonging and does not feel included in the curriculum, how that can turn off parts of learning in their brain. Turn off, you know, I can go more into more detail. Jeff will be like, you can't turn off parts of brain. But so I really liked that topic. So I did a book study. It was 3 sessions over the summer of 2023 with 14 educators. And there was food provided by the FRACTL Innovation Grant. So thank you for that. And the FRACTL grant also provided so I could give $50 honorariums to all the faculty who participated in all 3 of the book studies. So I was so grateful I could do that y'all provided that for the participants. I can go into all the research methods and stuff, but I figure I'll try to go a little bit quick and just tell you some of the main outcomes and how the book study in particular really helped educators. So here's my stats background. I have a little, the significant increases have a little star next to them. So before and after the book study, I asked the educators about, you know, their confidence in being able to teach in culturally responsive ways. That increased significantly. And their general instruction increased significantly. Their confidence in being able to instruct generally, not necessarily in culturally responsive ways. So to me, this really meant like, this helps everyone. It helps for all things. It's not just a certain type of teaching that improves. Empathy, I was really interested in kind of with my psychology background and my own teaching practices. That was already really high to start with, which like, good, we have empathetic teachers at Estrella. But it did still increase, just not statistically significantly. And I got some really amazing qualitative data from the educators. So this is the first time really, I've always been a quant person, a stats person, a math person, a numbers person. So asking people to like tell me words and having to analyze that was scary as hell. So I had a ton of codes that I came up with. Codes are like, you know, the themes you pull out from the data. So about 20 major themes emerged from lots and lots of codes. And again, I can go through them quickly. I also have examples of like quotes that brought about this theme if folks are interested. But generally, I had some themes for self-efficacy for culturally responsive teaching. So how important it is as an instructor to think about individualistic versus collectivistic societies and where our students are coming from when we're teaching, that words matter and behavior matters, inclusion, the importance of inclusion. A big one was that culturally responsive teaching is about more than race. So I think a lot of people, when they hear culture, they think race. And so a lot of times you have white folks being like, I don't have a culture. And it's like, yes, you do. We all have culture. So here's some examples. So just remembering that it's about more than race, although race is a huge part of it. And then just some themes from previous literature that came about was how important student learning plays a role. Again, go figure. Cultural competence and critical consciousness, so really raising some consciousness of socio-political awareness in your students. That's why I really like that New York Times, what's going on in this graph. So I'm going to take that with credit. We'll give you credit. Then promoting rigor and real world application, applying things to the real world. And then I was also curious about empathy, how the book study and community of practice. So some of us continued to meet even after the summer, just kind of catching up, being like, hey, this is a situation I'm going through. Do y'all have advice? So that's been really cool that it's sort of continued. So some themes that came about with empathy, cultural caring and empathy, was how important it is that we show compassion and understanding to our students, recognizing that a lot of our students have trauma, that have experienced trauma in their lives or stress, especially when we were teaching during the height of the COVID pandemic, relating to students, being willing to modify and change, which I know I don't need to preach too much to this group about that because most of you did course redesigns or so you know how important it is to update things, modify and change, and applying neuroscience to teaching. So again, knowing what's going on in our students' brains when we're doing certain things, when we're having them create a Google site instead of writing a paper, or when we have them interacting about statistics and doing discussion when they wouldn't really think that's like necessarily a thing, right? Or when we have them thinking about what assignment do I want to do? So how important that is. And then some thematic things that came up. So being selectively vulnerable, that means like us as instructors being willing to share about ourselves. Not overshare, but, you know, share so that we can relate with students and they can see that we're human. So kind of like the intro videos, Michelle, you were talking about, I thought that was really cool. Attending to the student as a person, seeing them as a holistic person, not just a student in our one class, because that's not the case, right? Cultural reciprocity, so having them be recognizing that students can bring a lot to the classroom just as much as an instructor can. And, you know, students aren't coming to the classroom like an empty vessel that you're just filling with information, right? And having similar values and interests. So yeah, and then I also polled students about their inclusion, belonging, and any experiences of exclusion. And it was a good sample size. It was almost 300 students in spring, and then almost 300 in fall. And so basically before and after the faculty did the book study. And so we found, I saw some increases, but not statistically significant increases in how they feel that their faculty support and comfort them and the empathy that their faculty show. But I want to say this survey was from had been previously validated. Our results for our students were so much higher than in that paper. So I'm like, hats off to the educators that were, you know, one, to EMCC educators, the educators that were in this study. Their students have a lot of sense of belonging already. So I'm like, really, really good for Estrella. Not so good for my study because then it wasn't a significant increase, but whatever. But it was actually a very happy finding, right? It's a good problem to have that your students initially, before you do a book study on culturally responsive teaching, feel a good sense of belonging. But I also got qualitative data from students, and I learned so much from that. I mean, think about, I asked them 3 open-ended questions, and most students answered at least 2 of the 3. And so if you do that math, I have about 600 students, and most of them answering at least 2 questions. So about 1,200, it was about 900. So open-ended responses that I had to code. So it was amazing. It was amazing to get that. The 4 major themes that came about was that basically, what is your instructor doing to make you feel belonging and inclusion? And so being responsive and giving feedback was the most common response. Like, being able to be open, responding, the faculty that are reaching out if students are struggling, that was a big one. Being empathetic and understanding, that was a really big one. Like, they understand if something comes up and I have to submit something late or something like that. Being collaborative and active, so making sure students, and this was in online or in person, so making sure that they're interacting with each other and also that the faculty is interacting and being kind of an active instructor. And then being warm and welcoming, so making them feel very welcomed in the classroom. So these responses did increase quite a bit from spring to fall. So just the number of students that reported those kinds of things. So yeah, basically the book study had an amazing effect, and I want to do it again, maybe with a different book, or with kind of even the same book and a larger group. So I'm really, really grateful to the FRACTL grant that y'all gave this opportunity for me to do this. And I did come up also with kind of a conceptual framework based on the findings I have, but I want to make sure to give enough time. And I might be at the 15-minute mark now, I don't know. So I will pause for now and say thank you again to the CTL and the FRACTL grant for supporting this.
All right, so thank you everyone so much for joining us this afternoon. As you can see, we have so much innovative work, not just within the classroom, but also within our communities. I'd like to thank all of our awardees and presenters for today, the FRACTL committee for their continued support of teaching and learning. And we look forward to the next showcase to continue to highlight all the wonders and beauties that we can create together as a community.